G'day and welcome back to my workbench. Look at the Vespucci. Yeah, a lot has happened. A lot has happened since the last video, and I'm going to show you in this one how I finally got all the Greebles and the deck furniture and the superstructure on. And there were a few problems, there are a few issues, which is quite surprising for this kit, because the other one I built, the Nippon Maru, it went together beautifully, but now we've really got some finagling to do. But I'll show you all of that. The masks I've just put in temporarily there, so as to basically give you an idea of what's going on. I haven't really done any work on them, they're not painted. But you can see she's starting to ship shape, yes. So if you'd like to see how I added all these tiny parts and made some changes, and I've also put a new brass railing on the stern. I'll show you all that and more in the video. Okay, roll the music. In the last video, I added the orange trim, and before that we did the stripes. So if you haven't seen any of that, you can go back. I'll put a link up to the series. You can go back and watch the various videos of the stages of getting to this and putting on the wood planks. Now, I also worked on the stern, and I'd added some tiny little brass brackets. I'd drilled out all these portholes. I'd added some doors, and I'd also added railing, but not this railing. I'd used a bit of mesh out of a motorcar kit I had, the Fiat. And a lot of people said, oh, it's out of scale, it doesn't look right. And it was just plastic mesh, it didn't look quite the part. So it was suggested I get some brass mesh. So I did that. I bought some very fine, well, as fine as I could get, brass mesh. This mesh didn't hold its shape very well once you tried to sort of cut it. Cutting with a knife was impossible. The whole thing just sort of bunched up and went crazy. So I had to cut it with very sharp scissors, and it had to be straight up and down. But I don't think it matters too much really, because that's going to be so tiny. But the mesh is finer, and being all brass, I just left it that way. The top rail is a brass rod that I bent. The bottom is the plastic part that's in the kit, and I've just used my Posca pens to add a gold edge on that. So look, I think that works, and it's certainly a lot better than the way the kit was originally, and it is an improvement on my plastic mesh. Probably still got a few furry bits I've got to tidy up there. I don't know, every time I look at it I see something. But it's, you know, it's my thumb can hide it. It's just a tiny thing, so we won't make it too big on the screen. Okay, what I want to do now is start getting things onto the deck, because I cut off a whole lot of Greebles when I did the planking. And of course I haven't yet put on any of the superstructure. Now these parts were all painted up on the sprue. And I sort of talked about in the last video how I'd masked things, and I painted them. I had things a bit of a wash, and I detailed in the windows. You know, I did all that. And somehow, in the months since I boxed this up to do a few other things, because I wasn't really getting a very good response on the Pucci, and so I thought I'll move on to some other projects, come back to it. Well, it's taken me a while to come back to it, but I am here, okay? But what happened is, I boxed it all up, forgot about it. When I came back to the box and I'm looking through the parts, go, oh yeah, that's there, the sprue's there, that's all there, and I'm checking through all the parts that I'm going to need to add, and oh dear, this one here, this is quite a large part, that was on a separate sort of sprue cut of itself, and somehow that's just disappeared. I have looked high and low, I can't find it, so I'm going to have to scratch build that part, but it's not very well. It fits here, right? So it's that tall, and it's basically the shape to fit the rest of the cabin. What I think I'll do is I'll build up everything first, and then I'll be able to measure the space that's left where I need to put that missing part, and we should be able to knock one up out of some evergreen styrene. All right, let's get on with adding Greebles. You may notice there were a couple of bollards on the front of the deck there that I added. Well, they actually went in the kit. What I did was I cut some 0.5 mm thick styrene strip there and just made a long run of it. And then I've got here some 1mm round stock styrene. This is evergreen stuff. And I'm trying to cut little 1mm little bollard things that are going to stick on that. You have to cut a lot because trying to get them to exactly the same height, a bit sort of tricky. But eventually I found enough that I could build this thing. Bit of glue down and then drop them in. Sort of a bit fiddly, but you can get there. Drop them in. Drop the other one in. It's a fiddly bloody thing. Anyhow, drop it in. And then sort of a bit more glue to make sure it all cements in. Now I made quite a few of them just in case some didn't work because I could hardly see what I was doing. This is at the limits of what I can actually look at. But no, they turned out all right. And there you go. I've got a couple there. So what you do now is you can cut them off the strip. So I avoided trying to make them individually. It's too hard. If I made them on the strip, it's a lot easier to sort of, control what you're doing. So they just simply cut off, push them off with a knife, and bingo bongo, you have a bollard. I'm ready to re-add all the little greebles to the deck and also add the little superstructure elements that I painted before. Now, those tiny little bollards that I scratch built, there they are. I painted those a very, very dark grey. So I'll get those off now, ready to go. There were a couple of other little round parts that I'd cut off the bow when I planked. They go back on. And I'd made some new, slightly taller little round pieces using some stock, some evergreen stock tube that was the same diameter, which matched the photos that I had of how all the deck pieces went together. Don't know what they are. I think they're sort of some sort of storage cases or something, or vents. Who knows? But they're going to go on now, and then we shall have the whole of the deck populated. To add all the greebles to the deck, of course, plastic cement is not going to glue to these thin slivers of veneer wood. So I'm going to use Aquatear, which is basically white wood glue. That will glue not only the plastic, but it'll also glue to the wooden deck. So let's get on with that. That's all the parts returned, and the little pin rail there, or belay rail for the ropes put in. So that's basically greebles completed, and they've come up quite good. Those are the little scratch, little protrusions that I made out of that rod. And then here in the bow, there's the scratch bollards I made. As you can see, they look, once you've got some paint on them, you wouldn't know they weren't a kit part. And then I've put back in the pieces that I cut out, and I've also added the belay rail there. So now what I need to do is start putting the superstructure pieces in, and I can do that with plastic cement, and they should go in a lot easier, because it was a bit sort of fiddly getting those little plastic bits on the deck. But they're there, and the white glue will cement them in really firm. Now the next couple of parts to go on are the top here, which was white, and this little piece at the back here. Now there's a problem with both of these. The top was covered in injection points there, which I've managed the best of my ability to sand out. And also I'm going to have to paint in here the tan colour, which I'd forgot for that deck up there. Similarly here it has a sort of a dark tan colour. So I'll do that, that's not a real issue. Apart from that, the part's okay. You just got to watch, there's a bit of flash and junk underneath. You need to remove that so that it fits nice and snug. Now this part is completely different now to what it was originally. Now if you have a look at the kit, it's quite big, and they look like they want you to put the curved parts to the back. Okay, and yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But the trouble is, it used to have about another millimetre in front of that. So when you put it into the little holes, it was sitting out at an angle like about that, which just looked pretty silly. So I ended up chopping that millimetre off and carving a little bit out of the little U part there. So the part's all cleaned up. This one now fits nicely here, goes in there, and then this one will slot in and fit behind there. So they will sit together correctly, and that little post is straight up and down. Okay, let's get on with the painting. Then I can assemble this and put in the radars. Got everything painted now. Little section here, and also realised this little part here needed painting, and the front and the back of it need to be orange, and of course the back of this need to be orange. Oh look, you know, and of course I had to paint this one up orange. Now I'm sort of worried about getting brush strokes and all this, and then I remembered I've got an orange paint pen. It's not a Posca one, but this is another one. I think it's whatever that is, iron lac. Okay, and lo and behold, this paint pen is the orange that I needed for the kit, so I can actually do my touching up and get some rather smooth painting just using the pen, because it actually goes on smooth in the brush, lays down nicely. So let's put all these parts in, and then we'll get on with the rest of the boat. Alright, on to this section now, which is the bow. And I was looking everywhere for this thing. They said chimney, which is obviously the smokestack. And I thought, where is it? Where is it? There's nothing like that in the kit. And then I found this little part. It's tiny. Just a tiny little stack. And it also needs to be orange. So, you know, this is the thing. You can't be complacent when you're building these boats. You've got to check everything. And you've got to paint as you go. I mean, there was one guy who was trying to argue with me in one of my Facebook groups, and he'd already glued together most of his bounty. Remember the bounty that I built? The one by Rebel? And I said, mate, you know, you're going to have so much trouble. Because he'd previously done this with a King George V ship. And he built the whole thing and then said to me, how am I going to paint it, Harry? And of course I told him, well, you can't, because you've already put it together. The whole trick with those is you paint them afterwards. Well, orange by Posca pens. The top of it's going to be black. I'll do that in a sec. But tell you what, well, it's not a Posca pen, but you know what I mean. Paint pen. I'm loving paint pens. And yes, you have to paint parts as you go, and there's no way you can come back later on to paint some parts that have already been glued in, because it's just too difficult, or sometimes absolutely impossible. I'm a bit disappointed with the fit here for the bridge, and try as I might, I just couldn't get those parts to fit in. The insides of these octagon ends here are a bit bloody hopeless. They required a lot of cleaning out. They were injection points and just gunky plastic marks, like, you know, very poor moulding. So I had sanded them out as best I could, but in the end, as much squeezing as I tried and pushing, I've got these gaps. And it's not a lot, but it's enough just to be annoying. And especially when the Nippon Maru went together so well. I mean, I'd probably get away with the stern, although even here things don't match up. I don't know why. They're level at the top, they don't match up. But also see how close this crane is sitting to those windows. You know, that's just silly. If I had my time again, I only dry fit the crane, I would cut back the rear of this, cut about 1 millimetre off it, and then glue all these pieces in, and they would fit together fine. So if you've got this kit, then that's a little tip. With this section here, before you put on the panels, cut away 1 millimetre. It's a hard one to dry fit and see if it's all going to fit together, so I couldn't do it before doing the deck. But also in hindsight, I would probably get this all working and painted up before I put the deck on. It's unusual. Normally you put the superstructure over your decks afterwards, but you expect it to fit. Anyhow, I think there's a simple solution for this, and that's simply to put a bit of filler in. I have puttied and sanded that as best I can, scraped it a bit with a knife. The top's going to get covered a bit at the front here, so that'll be good. That's as good as I can get it, and I've taped up just to protect the deck area from any splashes or knife drops or whatever as I was going. So now it's time to touch up. Now this pen's going to be far too big. My paint is too liquid. The pen is a lot thicker. So the trick I've found is to use a brush, and you can activate the pen so that it's basically getting its getting stuff down there, and then you can brush the stuff in. And it's quite thick, this, because it's essentially like a poster paint, and I think it's alcohol based as well, so it's sort of different to the so it doesn't drip. When I tried touching up using the orange that I'd made, it dripped down into all the deck planks and made an awful mess. So I'll keep going with this and just touch that up the way through, and then I'll probably clean up the top line and it'll be done. Some perfect plastic putty, bit of smoothing, dabbing with the Q-tip, right? And I also did get a little sander in there and a scraper, and it's not bad. It's, you know, it'll be good for the distance you can look at this kit. Don't look too close. And then putting the paint pen on my tiny little rosemary brush here. It's a little 4-0. That allowed me to touch the whole thing up. And of course I'd masked it out here basically just to protect any splashes. It worked. It worked fine. So that has fixed that problem. All right, let's put this whole thing together and then I'll talk about my plans for the Vespucci. There we have the Vespucci. Yes, the Amerigo Vespucci. Now look, she's nearly there. At least all those deck fittings are in, bar a couple of problems. The over here I've just painted that orange at the little bulkhead there because there's actually supposed to be again an end of an octagon, just like these ones here, but a lot bigger, that sits there. But that's the part that I lost. Somehow it fell off in the last 5 months while I've been sort of messing around with other things. So I've got to scratch that. That'll be in the next video. And there's also a horrible little part here. Right, you'll notice it's actually covering up Amerigo Vespucci. This. Now, that is sort of correct, but it's about 3 times taller than it should be. So I'll probably end up scratching my own. That'll be the correct height. And it's a little brown piece here, has a whole lot of windows, and it's an observation area. Basically, I think it is the actual bridge for the ship. So I'll do some more research on that, and I will make a much better version of that horrible piece. But apart from that, as far as this video is concerned, we are done. Next time, a bit of scratch building. We'll also get into putting the rigging on. I'll have to do the mast. They're only been temporarily painted just so I could sort of set this up. So I've got wood effects to do on the mast and detail. Oh, look, there's quite a bit to do, but it's all sort of off the deck from now on. So those of you that have been asking, there you go. This video was for you. So look, if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. And if you've got something to say, just be respectful. Tell me a joke. Make a comment. And you can join my channel. You can basically subscribe, okay? That'll be lovely. Then you'll always see my videos. You can also now hit that thanks button. Yeah, I like that. A little thanks button throws me a few shekels. It makes it easier for me to produce these videos because I've got a bit of cash to do it all with. And of course, you can always show full support by becoming a YouTube member or a Patreon and subscribe to me every month. Just throwing out that little bit to make it that much easier for me to keep bringing these videos to you. All right. Enough of the hard sell. Next time, we'll get on with all those other things. But for now, that's how I'm leaving the Vespucci. All right. Goodbye from Australia, and it's hooroo from Harry Houdini.